Sally Field just shattered everything you thought you knew about Forrest Gump. For 30 years, she carried a secret so devastating that it would change how you see one of Hollywood's most beloved films forever. While millions celebrated her as the perfect mother figure, Field was quietly enduring something that would break most people. The job that everyone believed was a career high point, it turned out to be a career death warrant, and she knew it on the first day on set. But here is what is truly appalling. It was not about one casting choice. What Sally Field went through reveals a sordid truth that every female in Hollywood experiences the moment they are no longer young enough. And when you see what actually happened behind those tear-jerking shots, you'll never see Mrs. Gump the same anymore. The truth Field at last unveiled is not only unjust, but it's also heartless. And the most ironic thing, everybody in the industry just tolerated it as totally normal. But wait until you hear about the confrontation that happened on set, the painful realization that hit her during filming, and the industry's secret that she's now exposing after 3 decades of silence. The year was 1994, and Forrest Gump was about to become the cultural phenomenon that would define a generation. Tom Hanks was delivering the performance of his lifetime. The effects were revolutionary, and viewers were falling in love with a film about the American dream, perseverance, and kindness. But for one of its leading stars, this enormous success came at a cost that no one could have anticipated. What is so surprising about this tale is that Sally Field nearly dropped out of the project altogether. There were times during initial script meetings when she had considered turning down the part, not due to quality of the script, but due to what taking it would do for her future. She could read the writing on the wall, and it frightened her. But Hollywood has ways of doing things that makes offers impossible to refuse. The movie had Oscar written all over it. Robert Zemeckis was at the peak of his directorial abilities, fresh from Back to the Future success, and Tom Hanks was already being rumored as a possible Best Actor winner. For any actor, to be involved in a project of that caliber is very enticing, even when your instincts say something does not feel right. Sally Field stepped on that set as Hollywood royalty. 2-time Academy Award winner. The actress who had dominated television with Gidget and The Flying Nun went on to demonstrate her dramatic abilities in Norma and Places in the Heart. She was respected, successful, and at the height of her ability. And so when the Forrest Gump script arrived on her desk, she ought to have been thrilled to be part of what became one of the greatest of films. Instead, she experienced something that would pursue her for the next 30 years. The screenplay was offbeat, unlike anything she'd done previously. The setup was dangerous, and no one really knew whether people would relate to this offbeat tale of a man who has an intellectual disability and yet finds himself somehow at the center of great historic events. Field has acknowledged that the project was always a mystery to her, opening up a box of chocolates without being sure what flavor you would find. But this is where things get shadowy. Field wasn't just skeptical about the film's box office potential. She was struggling with something much more intimate, something that hit to the very essence of who she was as an actress and as a female. The part she was being cast in would compel her to encounter a harsh truth about Hollywood that she wasn't prepared to encounter. And that truth would alter everything regarding how she perceived her career, her value, and her position within an industry she devoted her life to. The casting choice that came so easily to everyone else was tantamount to a butter knife to the heart for Field. She was being requested to portray the mother of Tom Hanks, a fellow who was really 10 years younger than she was. Consider that for a moment. In what universe does it make any kind of sense for an actor to portray the parent of someone who realistically might be their younger brother or sister? But this wasn't merely about age. This was about what this choice in casting meant. It was Hollywood's subtle way of informing Field, without actually saying so, that she was done playing the romantic lead. At 47 years young, she was being discreetly pushed into the mother category, while male actors her age were still getting leading man roles opposite women half their age. The worst part, she couldn't afford to say no. She needed the job. She wanted to be a part of something great. So she smiled, said yes, and prepared for a performance that would be both one of her favorite to do and one of the most agonizing of her career. What Sally Field went through on Forrest Gump was not an isolated event. It was one element in a methodical pattern in Hollywood that devastates women's careers the minute they're no longer deemed sexually attractive according to industry standards. And the hard truth is that moment arrives a lot sooner than you expect. Field has been frank about the point she knew her romantic leading lady days were limited. It was not something she came to recognize gradually or even a softening of the blow. It was slamming up against a wall going 100 miles an hour. One day, she was being offered richer, multi-dimensional parts as love interests and leads. The following day, she was being cast in mother roles virtually alone. The arithmetic of Hollywood ageism is brutal and unrelenting. Women turn 40 and find themselves fighting over a dwindling number of maternal roles, sage mentors, and secondary roles. At the same time, their male counterparts keep receiving love stories, action movies, and leading man roles well into their 60s and 70s. Field found herself stuck in this machine, observing how younger women were cast in the roles she would have been offered. While she was supposed to be thankful for whatever mother role came her way, the business had determined her value proposition had shifted and there was nothing she could do. But what made the Forrest Gump experience all the more agonizing? This wasn't any mother's role. This was Mrs. Gump, that great character who would utter some of the most quotable lines in movie history, who would become the emotional foundation of a movie that would touch the hearts of millions of people. It was a role that should have been a gift. It was a consolation prize. The casting itself indicated just how routine this age discrimination had turned in Hollywood. When casting directors and executives talked about teaming Field with Hanks, no one questioned it. No one asked if it made sense for a younger woman to play the mother of someone older. It was decided with that kind of casual indifference born from a system so broken, its absurdities felt natural. Field has disclosed that she wasn't the sole actress considered for the role who was subjected to this same cruel arithmetic. Other women with talent in their 40s and 50s were also being considered on the basis of how convincingly maternal as they might seem, not on their star power or range as actresses. All of the casting was done on the premise that women of a certain age were there solely to help tell male stories and not to tell their own. Field has spoken of the emotional nuances of portraying Mrs. Gump while struggling with a sense of identity crisis. She was supposed to be all maternal wisdom and unlimited love while secretly grieving the loss of her romantic leading lady role. She needed to project warmth and happiness while coping with the bitter fact that Hollywood had overaged her out a whole line of roles. The irony was devastating. She was bringing to life one of film's most supportive mother figures while feeling professionally reduced and personally invisible. Each scene she shot was a reminder that the business had found her useful only in the context of others' stories, not her own. And the sickest part, she needed to be thankful for it. She needed to grin in interviews, compliment the script, and pretend that this casting choice was genius. Because in the distorted rationale of Hollywood, it was. Women get pregnant. Men become legends. But Field's story was only just starting. The actual agony was yet to arrive. The Forrest Gump shoot was arduous in ways that extended well beyond the usual difficulties of movie making. Extended shooting schedules, intricate scenes, and the burden of shooting on something everyone hoped would be a major film instilled a sense of high-stakes intensity and total focus. But for Sally Field, there was a further dimension of emotional depth that no one else on the set could ever really grasp. Director Robert Zemeckis was famous for his meticulous approach to making a film, and what he wanted from Forrest Gump was precise and unyielding. Field was constantly arguing with Zemeckis over her interpretation of the character, and these meetings weren't always harmonious. She has said that there were times when she did not agree with the director's vision and her own take on Mrs. Gump, where tension caused unease between them on the set at times. But Zemeckis challenged her performance in ways that surprised her, even when it was hard. This tension, though difficult, eventually added to the depth and reality of her performance. Field has also credited that some of her finest work emerged out of these flashes of artistic tension, despite being emotionally draining. The relationship with Tom Hanks brought its own set of challenges. While their on-camera chemistry was indistinguishable and gorgeous, Their method approaches could not have been more disparate. Hanks worked on a gut level, soaking up everything around him like a sponge and following his natural charm to set the tone for the performance. Field, on the other hand, had to think through each detail to comprehend each motivation and chart each emotional peak. This stylistic difference created tension that audiences never witnessed. Field has spoken about feeling like she was always playing catch-up, attempting to keep up with Hanks's natural ease on the set, while contending with her own inner battle regarding what this performance meant for her future. The most difficult part of the performance was drawing on her own life as a mother, while at the same time struggling with being typecast as a mother figure in Hollywood. Field used her actual relationships with her sons to make Mrs. Gump's maternal bonds authentic, but each scene was a reminder that this wasn't how the business perceived her greatest asset. She had to locate the humanity in a character who otherwise could have been pushed to the side, bringing life to a person who was primarily there to prop and care for the male lead. Mrs. Gump had to be wise but not preachy, loving but not suffocating, and strong but not overwhelming for his story.